I've always thought of courage as a core or a standalone character trait. Being brave or courageous is just a part of who some people are. We think firefighters are courageous. We think people who stand up for justice are courageous. We think people who tell the truth when it's hard to be courageous. C.S. Lewis, however, saw courage in a different way, not as a standalone virtue, but as a part of, or not a part of, every other virtue. Lewis argues that every virtue, honesty, purity, kindness, justice, etc., is easy to maintain when things are going well. It costs nothing to be honest when there's no temptation to lie. However, every virtue eventually reaches a breaking point. Every virtue eventually gets tested. Honesty becomes courage when telling the truth might get you fired, for instance. Kindness becomes courage when you stand up for someone who is being bullied by a crowd. Patience becomes courage when you are under immense pressure and choose not to lash out. This also explains why I can sometimes do something incredibly brave, but at other times feel like a complete coward. We are never fairly labeled as entirely one or the other. Within certain topics, I feel like I can behave very differently on any given situation. Sometimes I live out my virtue of loving my neighbor with radical inclusivity very boldly and selflessly. Other times, I let fear prevent me from extending the level of welcome that I'm called to offer. As John Wesley might say, we're all on our way to perfection, but we're not quite there yet. C.S. Lewis, in the context of the Screwtape Letters, where this quote is found, focuses more on the testing of the authenticity of virtues we would ascribe to ourselves pretty readily. He says that without courage, virtues are merely, what he says, are fair-weather preferences. Lewis suggests that if a virtue isn't backed by courage, it isn't fully real. It's just a habit that hasn't been challenged yet. He says to think of it like a structural beam in a house. The beam might look beautiful, but its true purpose is to hold weight, so if the beam snaps when it's under pressure, its beauty is ultimately irrelevant. Lewis implies that courage is the structural integrity of our character. There are a lot of really intimidating scenes, a lot of threatening rhetoric, and a lot of really troubling policy in our world right now. And it's a tried and true historical strategy to try to overwhelm the courage out of people, to overwhelm the courage out of the virtues that we would gravitate toward in normal times. When we find ourselves tested, may God give us the strength to lean into that courageous divine love and to be found courageous in our own convictions. May they be tested and found true. And may each of us find freedom in God-given grace to be inspired to try again when we fall short. As MLK says, the time is always right to do right.